Welcome to Tech Notice. This is part 2 of the X570 ProArt video series. And in this video, we're going to be looking at the benchmarks and the temperatures. And in the end of the video, we're going to make a conclusion. Who is this PC for? Want to know how awesome it is? So then, let's get to it. So we're going to be looking at different benchmarks, different applications, and you're also going to be seeing a lot of different PCs that we have built on the channel, or reference PCs or test setups that we have done to give you an idea how good this is. Now, all of these benchmarks you can run yourself for free. So if you want to know or compare this system to yours, then feel free to make those benchmarks and then compare it to what we're testing over here. First of all, let's look at Adobe Photoshop. Now, this 5950X is actually 8.4% slower than the 12900K from Intel. Yet 5900X with 3070 is 10.5% slower. Now bear in mind that the graphics card on Adobe Photoshop doesn't actually give you pretty much any performance, so you can have the lowest or even the iGPU of the CPU or a dedicated graphics card like this 3090 and you'll have pretty much the same performance. Then the 11900K, we are 11.4% faster. The silent ProArt build that we did on the channel, which is 5600X and a 3070, is 17% slower, and the 10900K with 3090 is 19.4% slower. Next up, Adobe Lightroom Classic, another photo editing program, and the 12900K from Intel is 10.6% faster than this 5950X. Although the 5900X of this PC is 6.1% slower with an RTX 3070, but again, the graphics card in this program doesn't give you pretty much any performance. 11900K is 18.4% slower than this X570 ProArt build. The silent ProArt with the 5600X build, which is basically a budget version of this build over here, like a little brother of this, is 20% slower in Lightroom Classic. And the 10900K is 22.7% slower. Let's move on to video editing. Adobe Premiere Pro. Looking at our 5950X, the 12900K is 35.9% faster and the 11900K is 11.6% faster. And you might be saying, hey, this PC is not so good, 35.9% faster, but wait a second, I'm gonna address that in a moment. The actual real world performance is not so different. I'll explain in a second. The 12900K without the iGPU inside the CPU enabled is only 0.8% slower than the 5950X. The 10900K is 6% slower, and the silent ProArt, the little brother of this build, is 33% slower. So now then, looks like Intel has a massive lead in Adobe Premiere Pro. It is the truth in certain workflows and certain resolutions. So stick around till part 3 and part 4, where you can see the video editing timeline performance in Adobe Premiere Pro and Resolve, where you can actually see how good this processor performs. Now, the Intel QuickSync inside the 12900K or the 12th and 11th Gen series CPUs actually enables them to play back certain codecs up to 4K very well in Adobe Premiere Pro. And for that reason, the live playback score in standard and extended score is very, very high, which lifts the overall score. But also the live playback above 4K, as you can see in part 3 of this video, is much better on this 5950X. So I recommend you check out the 12900K timeline playback on my channel, as well as this part 3 series where you're gonna see this on Premiere Pro. So if your video resolution is above 4K, this one has a much bigger edge, because those 16 cores inside the CPU are massive performance cores rather than efficiency cores that you can find in the 12900K. So to really see the full story of the video editing performance and the playback, which in my opinion is the most important thing when it comes to video editing, then check out part 3 and part 4, of this video series, as well as the 12900K playback on the channel. Moving on to Adobe After Effects. Now, I want to mention that Adobe After Effects has had an update since these benchmarks that I have done, which actually enables you to utilize the multi-core performance of larger CPUs. So if you have this 16 core, for example, or Threadripper or Threadripper Pro CPUs that have lots of cores, you're gonna see much better scores in there, which means that this 5950X will perform even better than what I have down here. So looking at the previous version of Adobe After Effects benchmarks, I can see that the 12900K is 6.4% better. The 5900X plus 3070 is 0.1% better. Now in the new benchmarks, this actually has flipped because the 5950X with the 16 cores can actually utilize those cores and give you a much better score and use the multi-frame rendering, and that's what it's called. So 11900K is 9.1% slower for After Effects. The little brother called Silent ProArt is 13.6% slower, and the 10900K is 17% slower. Moving on to CPU rendering. In Blender, we have two benchmarks over here. We're gonna start with the shorter rendering benchmark, which is the BMW scene. Looking at the 5950X, this is the top of the charts, and we are 7.2% faster than the 12900K. Now, the one step down 5900X 12 core of this CPU, we are 36% faster. Seeing the 10900K from Intel, we are 61.4% faster, and the 11900K from Intel, we are 112% faster. Yes, more than twice as fast. Now looking at the longer render on Blender, which is the vector render, our 5950X has an even bigger lead over 12900K. The 12900K is 17.7% slower. The 5900X is 22.3% slower, and the poor 11900K is 112% slower. Last of all, let's have a look at DaVinci Resolve benchmarks. This is the extended overall score, and what you can see over here is that the 12900K is 8.6% faster than this over here. The 11900K is 9.7% slower than our system over here, and the 10900K is 12.6% slower. Comparing it to the 5900X or the Vitamin C build that we did on the channel, we are 12.8% slower. And my personal rig, which is the previous generation of this processor, 3950X with RTX 3070, we are 17.6% slower. As you can see, this system over here is pretty much as good as it can get and ranking on top of the charts. Now I'm gonna go more in detail in which one you should get in a moment in the conclusion, but before that I have to mention multitasking. Now because there is 16 cores, they're all performance cores, and 32 threads, the multitasking of this PC is absolutely fantastic. So if you are a creator who does photo editing and video editing, let's say at the same time, you are rendering a video while editing photos, or working on something on After Effects while photos are exporting or something like that, then this is a fantastic CPU or system for that. I'd call it the multitasking monster. And a question you might have is, how hot does this 16-core CPU run? And I've got good news for you. The CPU or the whole system runs very, very cool and quiet. And because it's all air-cooled, you don't have to worry about any liquid dropping or any pumps breaking. It's a solid system that can run your renders overnight without overheating and being quiet. Absolutely fantastic. So at 100% utilization with about 21 to 23 degrees ambient temperature in this room, the maximum temperature that I saw was in the 75 degree range. So in Cinebench, for example, 100% utilization, running the benchmark back to back, I'm sitting in the low 70s, but these are very, very good temperatures, especially with that type of monster CPU over there. Now, in conclusion, who is this PC for? I think it's for creators who need to do everything and need a system that is good at everything. Now you might be wondering, should I get this system or the 12900K with a ProArt system as well? By the way, little sneak peek, that video is coming out as well. We're going to do a whole build series of the Z690 and the 12900K ProArt series. So if you want to stick around to that, stick around to that. Now said that, if you are a video editing or renderer at most and working on 3D animation, rendering, video editing, then I think you might be leaning towards this system. And here's why. If you look at the timeline performance playback with this CPU compared to the 12900K, any footage above 4K, the 12900K starts to struggle. Whereas this guy chews through even 8K Red RAW without any problem, with color grade and all sorts of stuff on top. So if you are editing video or rendering larger scenes and you need more of those performance cores, then this is going to perform much better. If your video editing is up to 4K, then the Intel 12900K system that's about to come out is probably a better bet for you, because the quick sync feature and the iGPU inside the CPU can actually give you quite a boost of performance in live timeline performance, so you're gonna love that feature. And second of all, the photo editors. This system is also good for that, but if you are mainly photo editor, then this system is most likely an overkill in quite a few different aspects. So I recommend you stick around till part 5, where we're going to look at how can you save money on this build and which parts should you be changing depending on your workflow. So stick around till that. Even if you do any photo editing with this PC, just choose through it, no problem. Especially when it comes to photo rendering or exporting, putting those together, it's going to do a great job with that because of those 16 massive performance cores. So in a nutshell, I think this system is the best system you can get if you're doing all sorts of creative work. Photo editing, video editing, rendering, 3D modeling, any of that sort of thing. This is a fantastic system for you. There's a lot of graphics power, a lot of GPU power, as well as plenty of RAM that can be upgraded to up to 128 gigabytes. So my friends, let me know what you think about this build and if this is for you. It surely does make me drool and wish I was running this daily. I hope this does the same for you. Let me know in the comment section below. Also, on the way there, hit that like button. It actually makes a difference, just if you didn't know. Subs if you'd like to see more, and stick around till the rest of the parts of this video series. Thanks guys for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.